I wanted to speak to you a little bit about your perspective on Stanford. And why don't we start out with why you decided to come to Stanford for fellowship training?
Thanks so much for having me, Dr. Knowles. So I am an MD physician scientist. So I did a lot of work sort of in years off during my time in training. And I came to Stanford for fellowship because it was very clear to me that the mentorship and support that I needed in order to launch my career as an MD only physician scientist was going to be there. And I think that speaks not only to my experience with the mentorship here, but also how well everyone who's interested in science, from clinical science to bench science, is supported. So that was the major reason that I chose to be here.
Tell me a little bit about your clinical fellowship training here, how you think that sets you up as well.
Yeah, thanks. So, one of the great things about coming here was that it was very clear that there were experts in the field across the different realms of cardiology clinical work. So I knew that if I decided that I wanted to be a heart failure transplant doctor, that there would be excellent mentorship here in that, and that I would be able to get the type of quaternary care experience that I wanted across the board, from prevention to heart failure to EP, et cetera. So that was another great reason to come here for fellowship. I ended up focusing actually in the genetics of inherited cardiomyopathy and arrhythmia, which is something I think I wouldn't have been able to do at more than a handful of other centers around the US.
Yeah, so you're part of our Inherited Disease Center. Tell me a little bit about your clinic and your clinical footprint.
So I finished my training with 3 years in the Center for Inherited Cardiovascular Diseases here with you and Ashley, Matt Wheeler, Kareem Salam, you, Marco Perez. Through that, I was able to start my own clinic pretty much straight out of fellowship. And I decided that I wanted to focus on the sort of overlap between cardiomyopathies and arrhythmia. So I've been able to launch a cohort of patients here with arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathy, and through that have been able to coordinate a lot of collaboration with other folks around the country who have specific clinical interest in that, and really launch a program here, which I'm really excited about.
What made you decide to stay here for your first faculty job? And then, we're going to start to get into your basic research, but I think you've established a nice niche that allows you to go back and forth from the bench to the bedside. So why don't you tell us a little bit about those two questions?
I think the second question really is the answer to the first. There was no other place that I found interviewing and meeting folks at conferences that had the infrastructure that I needed to be able to not only do the sort of clinical cohort building that I needed, but at the same time take those questions directly back to the bench and then straightforward again, not just in traditional bench to bedside research, but also sort of incorporating all of the amazing technology that's in the Silicon Valley in order to do that.
You have a burgeoning wet bench. Tell us about what you're doing in the wet bench.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to start investigating differential pathogenicity of genetic variants or mutations in inherited cardiomyopathy, specifically arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathies. So what I've been able to do through work with my mentor and others around the division as well as the medical school is start a program in which we can use high throughput genome engineering or gene editing combined with high throughput single cell phenotyping to really understand at the molecular level what individual variants in specific genes do to cardiomyocyte biology.
And we're looking forward to that a lot. I think there's so much synergy, what you do with others in the division. Tell me about some of the collaborations that you have ongoing right now.
Absolutely. So they span the range from clinical cohort building all the way through iPSC-derived cardiomyocyte biology. Zhou Wu, who, as many people know, has started this amazing biobank here and really started the program in iPSC biology, and it's flourished because of him. He's one of the advisors on my KO8 and has been incredibly generous, not only in helping me to understand the biology of those cells, but also to incorporate members of his lab who can help me phenotype those cells really deeply. Sean Wu, who has an interest in one of the genes that I'm working on, RBM20, has been an amazing advisor in that vein. And then my amazing mentor, you and Ashley, who has been able to help me sort of combine everything from clinical genomics all the way through cardiomyocyte calcium handling.
you were one of our chief fellows just a few short years ago. Maybe you can talk about a little bit about your interactions with the current fellows and teaching and kind of transitioning from that role of being a mentee to being a mentor.
That is one of the great things about Stanford is that there's mentorship, from the beginning between you and your fellows, as well as from the incredible breadth of faculty here. I have benefited from that at every stage. I think now one of the best things I get to do during the year is teach the general fellows and the heart failure fellows about ARVC and arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathy through lectures. And then by working with them, on the consult service or when I'm on general cardiology or CCU as an attending, getting to interact with them is fantastic because there's just a lot of knowledge sharing going on and it's really a partnership, which is great.
Now, one of the things that we know is really true is that there's an underrepresentation of women in cardiology, and especially women who are doing basic science in cardiology. Maybe talk to us a little about your journey in that regard and how you think Stanford has helped you potentially move forward.
That's such an important concept to talk about. I think that I came from a residency program where there actually were quite a few clinician female faculty. And so, when I got here, the first thing I noticed was how intent Stanford was upon building out its, talented female faculty, especially in cardiovascular medicine. In my incoming fellowship class alone, more than 50% of us were women. And that actually helped us build this amazing relationship of sort of co-mentorship between us and the crossing of our networks. We actually started a women in cardiology interest group, which has been great to see evolve over the last 6 or 7 years, in which, female faculty get together with female fellows, once a quarter or once a month, just over a glass of wine or a cup of coffee in a large group. And we talk about not just the struggles that are specific to women in cardiology and science and medicine, but also just career development, just not otherwise specified. What did you run into? How do I get around this problem? It's been fantastic.
Are there anything else that you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked you about?
I think I want to come back to the support for junior faculty here. It's such an incredibly critical time in our career. And I think when you're looking for a fellowship, that's got to be forefront in your mind. And one thing that I have witnessed, not just in watching or participating in my own career development, but also in seeing how my colleagues have advanced and also comparing that not only to other institutions, but even other sort of subspecialty divisions, it's so clear that the leadership understands the critical nature of that period. They're always asking about it in faculty meeting. How can we do better? And I've benefited from that. I've benefited from that during my, faculty discussions when we were first starting to through the faculty search and interview process. In talking with the chief, it was just very clear that he knew what I needed and he understood why I was asking for what I needed, and he was working with me instead of just negotiating against me. And it was really an awesome experience.
The preceding program is copyrighted by the Board of Trustees of the Leland Stanford Junior University. Please visit us at med.stanford.edu.